What's happening? And thanks for checking into the 24th Floor Sports Show. We are still in March Madness Mania. The SEC dominating the bracket. So Stephen Willis of Locked On Ole Miss and Ron Slay of the SEC Network will join me to break down all things tournament. It's March 27th, and the 24th Floor starts right now. Yes, sir. It's my main man, Stephen Willis, host of Locked On Ole Miss. Good day to talk Rebels because they're still dancing. Steve-O, I know you're happier than a pig in slot right now, man. You got your men's and women's teams in the tournament. You got spring practice going on for football, man. Are you just overwhelmed with all things Ole Miss right now?
Yeah, apparently we decided that, hey, we're going to try this high-level basketball thing on and see how it fits. And Coach Yo and the ladies doing an absolutely fantastic job heading out with a game with UCLA. We'll see how that goes. Ole Miss has a game against Michigan State, and I don't think this is a situation like when the Ole Miss last went to the Sweet 16 where Ole Miss fans hoped to beat Arizona. You hoped you would be good enough to beat Mike Bibby and that Arizona team. Ole Miss is only a 3.5-point dog in this game. This is the smallest line out of all of the Sweet 16 games. And I think Ole Miss probably needs to go in expecting that they can get a victory in this game, because I think if they keep playing the way they are, they held over 20-point leads against Iowa State and North Carolina. If they keep that momentum going, Michigan State's going to have a dogfight on their hands.
Yeah, certainly one of the hottest teams in the NCAA tournament right now. You bring us to our big idea. Let's go ahead and jump into it. We've made it to the second weekend of the tournament. Ole Miss find themselves still on the dance floor in the Sweet 16 after knocking off North Carolina and Iowa State. Already on its deepest tournament run since 2001. That run, too, ended in the Sweet 16. But like my man Stephen Willis says, there is a lot of belief in this Rebels group. So don't say that to Chris Beard's group.
It's just about these players. I mean, we got guys that have played 4 and 5 years of college basketball and given everything they could have possibly given, and just haven't played in the NCAA tournament yet. So, and we felt that pressure. We were kind of a, win or bust team. Like we set the objective really high. We want to go in the tournament. We want to have a good seed. We want to be one of those teams that has a chance to win the tournament. And, Ole Miss winning the tournament, I don't know. Probable? No. Possible? Absolutely.
I tell you what, Coach Beard's one of those guys, like he just kind of, he's one of those guys you think you want to run through a wall for, and I think this Ole Miss Rebels team has kind of adopted a lot of what he brings to the table. Friday, they're going to take on Tom Izzo and Michigan State, the 2 seed. First, Stephen, what have you thought about what the Rebels have already accomplished thus far?
I think they're ahead of schedule, honestly, as far as the Chris Beard build. We thought that Ole Miss might be able to make the second weekend, but it wasn't a guarantee early in the season. I mean, Ole Miss kind of got whipped pretty good against Mississippi State, whipped pretty good against Memphis. We knew that the NCAA tournament was going to be all about matchups, and if you got the right matchups, you could probably advance. And I thought going into this tournament, the way it was set up, if Ole Miss made it past the North Carolina game because of the eliteness that they have in their backcourt, I thought that Ole Miss could make a little bit of a run. I thought they matched up pretty well against Iowa State. Now against Michigan State, it's going to be interesting, but it's not going to be interesting in the fact that you need Sean Padula and Juju Murray and Matthew Morrell to really show out. I don't think this is going to be a guard game. I think this is a game where Malik Dia, this is why he got recruited to Ole Miss. Malik Dia, with his ability to play bully ball, with his ability to kind of stunt the rebounding advantage that Michigan State has in this game, this is the reason that Malik Dia got recruited to Ole Miss.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point. Malik Dia has been so good this year. You didn't know if he was going to be like the guy. I think we all came into the season expecting it to be kind of Matt Morrell and Sean Padula's team. Morrell certainly coming back after having tested the waters of the NBA draft last year. But Malik Dia's ability to kind of play whatever way Ole Miss really needs him to play has been really impressive thus far. To your point, he can play the bully ball inside. He can rebound really well. but he's also really good in kind of that high post area where he can be allowed to make some decisions. He can put the ball on the floor a little bit. He can shoot from the outside. You've got to respect him. So I don't think Michigan State will be allowed to kind of pack things in because of what Malik Dia brings to the floor. Ole Miss not necessarily a superb three-point shooting team, but certainly one that is respectable. I think Padula as well as Morrell have been playing pretty well. But in your mind, what's going to be the biggest X factor for this team? Will it be the rebounding battle, or will it be something else?
The rebounding battle is always big. I think that Ole Miss needs to not win when they lose the rebounding battle. It just needs to not be by more than 10. Okay. Like Florida and Auburn, just kind of when the games that got out of hand, it was because they mauled them on the boards. But I think the low-key thing in this game is going to be like DN, Dre Davis, and Jamin Brakefield. If they can provide enough of an offensive spark against the big guys against Michigan State and force defenders to help, and make it to where Ole Miss can pass the ball out and get opening looks with Matthew Morrell and Sean Padula, that's when this offense is going to really start clicking. But I do think this has a chance to be a major league rock fight.
Yeah, rock fight is about right, especially because Michigan State is so good on the defensive side of the ball, the number one team in three-point percentage defense. So I think Ole Miss is going to have to knock down a couple and really make the Spartans respect that, but they're going to have to get in the paint in this one because Michigan State is so good around the perimeter. And at the same time, I think it has to be a big game for Dia and Dre Davis on the inside because Michigan State does so well in rebounding. They have a plus 9.8 rebound margin. I think that's top 2 or 3 in the entire country. So this is certainly going to be a game where they've got to put their best foot forward. And to your point, they are one of the hottest teams in the NCAA right now. 2 really big wins against Iowa State and North Carolina in 2 games. I think that probably shocked a lot of people, especially if you're not familiar with Ole Miss basketball. I mean, we had the one pundit that called them frauds. Didn't think they were going to advance. When you heard that comment, what did you think? Was that enough bulletin board material? It certainly seemed like it in the post-game press conferences when we talked to the players in the locker room.
I thought he said the one word that would absolutely get Chris Beard's attention.
That would get anybody fired up, I feel like. Calling me a fraud? I'm in the tournament?
Yeah. Yeah, and once that happened, I think everybody talks about bulletin board materials. I don't think it was bulletin board material. I do not think that he did that, but I think that he galvanized the team. And divisions and things that might have been happening inside behind closed doors. Anybody that's been on a team realizes how that works. I think this kind of eliminated that and just kind of had them pulling the rope in the same direction. And that's what happened. You call it bulletin board material. I call it basically galvanizing the unit for what can happen. And also remember, in this game, it looks like Michael Brown-Jones is going to be returning in this game. He practiced in Atlanta today ahead of the game. And that is 5 more fouls with a physical Michigan front court. That is the ability to where you're not worried about Malik Dia or Jamin Brakefield getting 2 fouls early because you have extra fouls on that bench that you can handle in your rebounding battle.
Certainly need bodies. I think this is a team in Ole Miss that we feel has pretty good depth, and I think depth is going to play a big part really for any of these teams that are still able to play, because you are going to get in those situations where somebody's got an early foul trouble or sometimes you just need a blow, right? Because these guys have been playing for so long up until this point. Having Brown-Jones back is a really, really big deal alongside those bigs in the front court. Let's take a look at the Sweet 16 really quick. If the Rebels manage to beat Tom Izzo and Michigan State, they will take on the winner of Auburn and Michigan. Some of the other SEC matchups that we've got, Florida's got Maryland, Arkansas, and Coach John Calipari will take on Texas Tech. Alabama will get the red-hot BYU Cougars. And then the all-SEC matchup, Kentucky and Tennessee. Not something you see very often, but in the event that Ole Miss takes down Michigan State, Steven, if they get Auburn again, do you like that matchup? I mean, it's hard to beat any team 3 times.
It'd be 4 times that Auburn has to beat Ole Miss, yeah. And honestly, if you go back and look at that SEC tournament game, Ole Miss didn't shoot. They were 4 for 23 from 3. If Ole Miss would have just made some 3-point shots, because they were having open looks. They got open looks in that game and just didn't knock them down. They could have won that game. They played extremely well. I do not think that even Auburn, I think Auburn would even admit they do not want to play Ole Miss a fourth time.
Yeah.
It's because even if you win that game, you're expected to win that game, and it's going to be so hard to get those kids up over a team that you've beat 3 times this year. And Michigan is not a very good matchup, honestly, for Ole Miss with those big Twin Tower bigs going through. That was the one that probably makes me more nervous. But I guess it's a one step at a time type deal because you're dealing with the Hall of Famer and the Michigan State Spartans, and in a rare feat, Ole Miss is going to go up against Jace Richardson in this game, but his dad played for Tom Izzo in the 1999 tournament when Michigan State won the game. So Ole Miss will actually play father-son in the NCAA tournament, which is a pretty good feat for a team that's on about their 12th game.
Yeah, certainly you look for all those little fun facts, the little game within the game, the story within the storyline kind of things when you get into this NCAA tournament. Yes, this will be the second time that Ole Miss has played Michigan State ever, which I think is kind of interesting. And that was on a run that Ole Miss was back in 1999. So when you're talking about Chris Beard, he's now taken 4 separate programs to the NCAA tournament. First time Ole Miss has even been in it since 2019. In your mind, what has Beard's impact on the program been, in your opinion? I know you said they were ahead of schedule. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think they're ahead of schedule because leading into that, they'd struggled pretty much off and on ever since 2013. They had the NCAA run with Marshall Henderson, and before that was the Rod Barnes. So about once a decade they'd make the tournament. So I figured after Kermit Davis and the hole that they were in, it was going to take a little bit of time. It just was. In year 2, not only making the NCAA tournament, but making the Sweet 16 and defeating 2 top 5 programs along the way. That's ahead of what is expected. Ole Miss has never beaten 2 top 5 programs in a season. So that's the reason I say that they're ahead. Now, Chris Beard, with what they can do, I do think that Chris Beard has Ole Miss on a similar trajectory as Bruce Pearl, what he did at Auburn. And the difference is Chris Beard has the transfer portal now, and it can be happening faster. Bruce Pearl had to do it over multiple years before the portal. So I do think Chris Beard, if he stays at Ole Miss, and especially if Ole Miss were to win the game against Michigan State and have an Elite 8, I think transfer portal recruiting, I think high school recruiting is going to take off. And all of a sudden that beautiful new building that they have on campus at the Pavilion, that becomes a major asset and thing that they can look at. And with the Rev Share and the Grove Collective doing their thing, I think a lot is in place for Ole Miss to make a little bit of run in basketball, especially men's and women's, because the rumor is Coach O's doing some work right now in the portal.
Yeah, come to the SIP, certainly sounding better and better to a lot of college basketball players, both on the men's and the women's side. For Chris Beard, you're going into year 2. You win 20 games last year, so I think even then you were a little bit ahead of schedule getting to that 20th win. You get him into the NCAA tournament this year, 24 wins on the year. What we've seen both in basketball and in football and really all these sports now is because of the way the transfer portal works, it can be instant impact. Year over year, you don't have to wait, multiple years in a row to kind of get a team that can be competitive. And I think what we've seen with the Grove Collective and everything that Ole Miss is able to bring to the table, especially on the football side, as long as Chris Beard continues to have success, it's going to be real easy for a lot of these teams to slide, a lot of these players to kind of come and be interested in what Ole Miss has to offer, because at the end of the day, a lot of these cats, they just want to get into the NCAA tournament, man. A lot of them have played for so long. We heard it in that soundbite that Chris Beard had, was they've got so many of these guys who have played in their 4th and 5th year but hadn't had a taste of the tournament, and now you have a potential to not only make a Sweet 16, which I think, to your point, is already an ahead of schedule kind of thing, but if they can get to an Elite 8, they could potentially get to a Final Four. You're talking about big time eyes on the Ole Miss program, and one that's been really a university in an athletic department that's already kind of been on the rise. In your opinion, Stephen, what is the cap? I guess I don't know if cap is the right word. Do you feel like this might be the end of the rope for Ole Miss, or is a Final Four berth kind of in your bracket? Is it busted?
No, I said before the tournament, no joke, everybody can check out my bracket, or if you need to say it, I had Ole Miss in the Elite Eight.
Okay.
Seriously. A rematch with Auburn. I just felt like that was a thing of destiny, and we'll see how it goes because, like I said, if Ole Miss beats Michigan State on Friday night, Ole Miss becomes the story of this tournament.
Yeah.
They become to what Florida Atlantic, the George Mason, all of that. And they go into a game against Auburn and Michigan with all the momentum, and weird stuff happens in this tournament all the time. And if Ole Miss gets that game, if Ole Miss were to get that game, all of a sudden you have a week of everybody talking about that program. I'm telling you, what Chris Beard has done to Ole Miss basketball in the last week, if you look at the video count of what I have going on this week, I have not touched a football story this week. It
Which
has
is
been
rare
all
for you.
basketball.
Very rare for you to not
all
touch a football story at Ole Miss.
Yeah, all week touching nothing but basketball, and I'm getting 4,000 views per video going on. So we always joke is like, hey, we're basketball school now. Yeah, we're going to try this on and see if it fits.
Yeah, shameless plug for Steven there, the host of Locked On Ole Miss. Make sure you check out all his stuff on YouTube, on Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. I know we are waist deep in March Madness, but in the SEC country, it is kind of always football season, even though, to your point, Steven, you guys are a basketball school these days. What can you tell us about what is developing in Oxford for Rebels? We are in the second week of spring football.
Well, I will say this, and if you look around college football, they've de-emphasized spring football. So basically what spring ball is about one-on-ones, individual players, and basically roll call. That's what spring football is, and that's what people get to see. I know that people are raving about how Caleb Odom looks. I mean, he's 6'6", 230 pounds, playing wide receiver. There's kind of a DK Metcalf element to his game, which I'll be interested to see what happens. Austin Simmons is obviously everywhere. He has a chance to be a really good quarterback. I talked to him on my show probably about a week and a half ago, and whenever you talk to him, it's a 1-1 level mind when it comes to the NFL. He can do all of that. So if he can go out on the field and perform, the sky's the limit for that guy. Now, I think the defensive line, they feel pretty good about where they sit right now. I don't know if they feel pretty good about the defensive backs at this moment.
Yeah, I would say defensive back might be the place to fill the biggest hole. If you're Ole Miss from a team that, I mean, their defensive backfield was respectable last year, but they had so many fantastic front four players, front seven players. You're talking about Princely Uman-Mielen, who's in the draft now. You're talking about Suntarine Perkins, who's back and probably will be the leader of that defensive line. Do you see the backfield being a spot where they're really going to have to fill some holes? I think wide receiver, they're probably okay. But you lose a Trey Harris, you lose Watkins as well. Is Caden Lee going to be the leader of that group?
Yeah, and the defensive backfield, what you said, the answer is we don't know. I mean, they brought in Sage Ryan. They brought in some transfers that have a chance to show up, and they have a really good freshman class coming in with Keon Young and LaDarian Clardy and Cortez Thomas that all have a chance. But at the real, since they're not going to be on TV, nobody's going to see anything in practice. It's all rumors and innuendo. But the key will be in the transfer portal in the spring, if all of a sudden there's a couple of defensive backs that get pulled out of. That's how we're going to know about that. I like the running back position. Logan Diggs in his 6th year of college football, and Kewan Lacey and Shakai Mills-Knight. That group in the fall has a chance to be pretty good. The wide receiver unit has a chance to be better in 2025 than it was in 2024, and that's ridiculous to say whenever Trey Harris was in that room. And with Austin Simmons, the offensive line, I think the offense is going to be fine. I think the front seven is going to be fine. It's going to be the back end of that defense where I have my questions all the way up into fall camp.
You had a chance to talk to Austin Simmons. What stood out to you the most from your conversation with him? And then secondly, I know we always like to, for whatever reason, we always like to obsess over the backup quarterback. What do you think that backup QB situation looks like?
Talking to Austin Simmons, the most impressive, he's incredibly thoughtful guy. Whenever he gives answers, you can tell that he processes information faster than normal people, if that makes sense. And I think Austin Simmons has a chance to not step up from Jackson Dart. They're different quarterbacks. They do what they have to do. But Austin Simmons has a chance to be different in a similar way to like Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa whenever they came in. I think that's the Austin Simmons track. And in the backup quarterback, I think it's A.J. Maddox right now. He has one of the strongest arms on the team. He is somebody that Ole Miss fans are going to get introduced to this year the same way that they did Austin Simmons a year ago. So I'm pretty excited about what they can do and where they are offensively. Like I said, just they got to take care of the back end of that defense, and their schedule sets up to be pretty good this year.
All right, Stephen Willis, the man who is probably the busiest man in the Oxford circles these days, covering Ole Miss basketball and Ole Miss football. Plenty to be proud of if you're a fan of Hotty Toddy. Stephen, I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me.
For sure. All right, coming up, we're going to take a little break. Still diving into some March Madness action. The SEC's networks. Ron Slay, Big Play Slay, will tell us why the Tennessee Vols are poised to keep dancing in the Sweet 16. Stick around.
On Weather Impact Alert Days, stay informed, prepared, and connected with ABC 24 and 24+. Coverage that alerts you to what's coming and how it will impact you. Watch extended weather coverage on 24+. The 24+ TV app, streaming 24/7 local news from the team you trust on your time.
Rain showers through the day today, and we're starting.
Track how the weather will impact your day.
Rain coming in tonight into tomorrow.
Extended, continuous coverage of breaking news, live from the scene. Go deeper with in-depth interviews and exclusive reporting. All the local news you need, live or on demand. 24+, complete coverage of your local news, weather, and more.
Here comes our first batch of rain. Some severe thunderstorms and even several tornado warnings.
I think the bigger issue is going to be the wind gusts. So you start getting some branches knocked around. You could definitely see some power outages today. Those storms could pack a punch.
It's not just the thunderstorms, it's the fact that this low pressure is so strong.
How big that storm system was.
On Weather Impact Alert Days, stream extended coverage on 24+. Download on your TV and watch for free. When news breaks, watch 24+. See the story as it's happening. Be on the scene, faster than ever before. Live updates from the team you trust. Stream breaking news on 24+. Download free on your TV now. On Weather Impact Alert Days, stay informed, prepared, and connected with ABC 24 and 24+. Coverage that alerts you to what's coming and how it will impact you. Watch extended weather coverage on 24+. The 24+ TV app, streaming 24/7 local news from the team you trust on your time.
Rain showers through the day today, and we're starting.
Track how the weather will impact your day.
Rain coming in tonight into tomorrow.
Extended, continuous coverage of breaking news, live from the scene. Go deeper with in-depth interviews and exclusive reporting. All the local news you need, live or on demand. 24+, complete coverage of your local news, weather, and more.
Here comes our first batch of rain. Some severe thunderstorms and even several tornado warnings.
I think the bigger issue is going to be the wind gusts. So you start getting some branches knocked around. You could definitely see some power outages today. Those storms could pack a punch.
It's not just the thunderstorms, it's the fact that this low pressure is so strong.
How big that storm system was.
On Weather Impact Alert Days, stream extended coverage on 24+. Download on your TV and watch for free. When news breaks, watch 24+. See the story as it's happening. Be on the scene, faster than ever before. Live updates from the team you trust. Stream breaking news on 24+. Download free on your TV now.
As March Madness continues to roll, the SEC still with a lot of teams standing. We talked about Ole Miss, and to give us a little Tennessee Vols perspective, I'm tagging in a former Vol, Ron Slay, radio host for 104.5 The Zone in Nashville, and college basketball analyst for the SEC Network. Ron, I know you're probably itching for Friday, my friend. A lot going on.
Yeah, it can't get here fast enough for me, man. I've been waiting and salivating to get after Kentucky, you know, especially after hearing the comments made by Mr. Butler. So I think it's some guys over there in Orange that can't wait to get after this game too. Plus, it's a rivalry on this type of stage. This is what it's about, a little border war right here.
A A little border war is right. The Tennessee Vols in the Sweet 16 for the third year in a row. Vols took down Wofford and UCLA to land back in the second weekend. They will see a fellow SEC foe, to Ron's point, Kentucky, for the third time this season, which is something you don't really see, especially when it comes to the big dance. Wildcats won both of the earlier matchups this year. Tennessee led by 2 All-Americans in Zakai Zeigler and Chaz Lanier. Ron, I know you're going to be pulling for your Vols, but what is it about Kentucky that's kind of given them fits so far this year?
Well, first of all, it's all about matchups. Once you get in these games, you throw the rivalries and everything out the window, and it's about the matchups. I thought they did a terrific job of being able to keep the floor spaced, and they have a lot of guys that can initiate the offense that are unconventional. So when Lamar Butler is not, initiating the offense, you got a guy like Amari Williams that can bring the ball up as a point forward, point center, however you want to label him, and is really a really good passer. So he's a guy that can initiate, and with those shooters out there, you kind of got to stay home. You got to communicate at a high level, and one little piece of space, and they got an opportunity to knock it down. They also have guys that can come off the bench. They're known for shooting, and they've shot the ball really well versus Tennessee. Now, have they shot 50% in 2 games versus anybody else in the country? I don't think so, but they were dialed in, locked in. You had guys that went down with injuries, where other guys like Noah and Perry, they stepped up on the wings coming off the bench. So I think one thing about it, man, the matchups of the length, I think bothered Tennessee a little bit early on, and it's just being a first time seeing an offense kind of like what Mark Pope was running, gave them a little bit of a little pushback, but I do think now walking into this situation, it is a little bit different. Both teams are different. Jackson Robinson, who had a really good game against Tennessee, is out now with a season-ending injury. So it's going to be interesting to see just who steps up in that to fill that void for Kentucky.
Yeah, and I think this is a situation where when you get deep into the postseason like this, Tennessee's kind of been here before, right? You had 4 or 5 of these guys who were on that team that made it into the Sweet 16, the Elite 8 last year. Chaz Lanier's playing fantastic, 24.5 points in his first 2 NCAA tournament games. 29 points is an actual Vol record for a debut in the NCAA tournament. What have you liked about what Tennessee has done kind of leading up to this moment? And in your mind, is it kind of funny to see another SEC team in the big dance?
Nah, man, I welcome it. This is first of all where you wanted the SEC to be, where Commissioner Sankey, pulled everybody to the side and told them we need to take basketball a little bit more serious and get it at least to the level of where you see baseball and softball and other competitive sports throughout the SEC. So not surprised at all, especially when you get 14 in, the most that had ever been entered into the NCAA tournament in any conference. So shattering that record. So no, I'm not. But when you talk about Chaz Lanier, what he's been able to do, man, is evolve throughout the season. Understand who his teammates are. His teammates understand who he is. It's always a learning curve when you start to hit that transfer portal and guys buying into just exactly who they need to be and who they are. He is a prolific shooter. It was starting to be known throughout the SEC and in conference play. And he had to tweak a couple of things. So he started to do a better job of going to the basket, getting to his spots in his mid-range, not settling for the 3, knowing that if he can create by getting to the basket, the defenses will collapse, and he'll be able to kick it out to other guys. And I think his teammates, they did a great job of getting to know him and also put him in great positions, kind of having a crash test from last year with Dalton Connect, who was a prolific scorer the same way. So it was a good void to be filled by Chaz Lanier. I think he's done that. When you get right there and you start to be mentioned with All-Americans and things of that nature, I think you've done your part.
Yeah, Rick Barnes certainly doing a fantastic job last couple of years finding those diamonds in the rough, right? You get a Dalton Connect out of, I think it was North Dakota, South Dakota, something like that. One of the Dakotas up there in the Northwest. You bring him in, he gives you a fantastic run, and then you come and you get a Chaz Lanier to kind of do the same. I think when you look at the NCAA tournament, it can be about X's and O's. It can be about fantastic coaches, which Rick Barnes is, and maybe Mark Pope is kind of developing into one himself. But it's about Jimmys and Joes. You got a Lanier, but this team also has been leaning on Zakai Zeigler for like the last 3, 4, 5 years, it feels like an All-American once again alongside Lanier. What does Zakai bring to the table that makes him so tough and really an asset in a tournament like the NCAA tournament where it's a one-and-done situation?
Anybody that's watched these tournaments understand that guards win tournaments. You know, a big man can carry you through the game, but you need a guy like a guard to be able to kind of control the pace, control tempo, and Zakai Ziegler is that. You know, you've been able to have a guy right there with Coach Barnes for 4 years to be able to understand like what his methods are. You got an extension of the coach right there on the floor. So you have Zakai ready to take over when coach doesn't get his call in. He has an opportunity to give the coach a feel of what's going on in the game that he may not necessarily be able to get standing on the sidelines. And then when you talk about just pure competitive, you talking about Jimmy's and Joe's, he's one of the biggest Joe's, even though his stature may be small. When it comes to the way he plays his game, it's totally different. This is a Goliath in a small person in a David's body. But one thing about it, man, it's back-to-back SEC players, defensive player of the year, back-to-back first team. This is all what people got to remember coming off of a torn ACL. So to add this to the mix and the way he's shooting the ball right now, I think he's playing like one of the top 5 point guards in the country. And that All-American list was warranted because of what he's been able to do, and he's only gotten better. So guys not being able to go under the screen, daring him to shoot. He's his decision making has been tremendous throughout the season. It started with the lob. Now he's got into a little floater game going, getting to his mid range, knocking down the 3-ball, and we all know defensively what he brings to the team. But I think also the leadership, as far as being a vocal leader, is something that he's taken on and really been able to lean on. His guy like Jemai Meshack, another guy that should be mentioned when you start talking about National Defensive Player of the Year. These two guys have been in this program for a long time, man, and started in this program and the winningest Vols to play in this program. So I think that says a lot, man, when you look across the landscape of college basketball, guys that haven't transferred, that have been in the program, understand who they are. You have a culture about yourself. So along with Zakai Ziegler, you get Jemai Meshack, and man, it's a different ball game with those two guys out there.
Yeah, Ziegler and Meshack, it's rare that you ever get two guys on the same team who are going to both be in the conversation for Defensive Player of the Year nationally. You also have Ziegler and Chaz talking about two guys who are All-Americans. So a lot to be positive about if you're a Tennessee Vols fan. I think we know defense travels. When your shot doesn't necessarily travel to some of these arenas you haven't been in, your defense will. Tennessee is actually 101-9 when they held another team under 60 points. I would say under Rick Barnes. I would say 60 points is probably your magic number. Ron, for those of y'all who don't know about Ron's resume, let me give it to you real quick. Went to the Sweet 16 in 2000 as a freshman. He was 2000-2001 third-team All-SEC, and he was AP SEC Player of the Year and a third-team All-American for the Vols as a senior. So you've been in the big dance. You know what it looks like. When you get into the NCAA tournament, but especially when you get into these later rounds, what is the difference? What do you remember about your time playing in the big dance?
Being able to contain your emotions. It always helps when you got experience and you've been there. And I think that's some of the things that not only the coaching staff, but you get guys like your leaders able to lean on, man, because you can get caught into the glitz and the glamour, the police escorts. You get into the gym, all the media's there for the practice, and it's cameras flicking. You got a certain amount of time, I think 40 minutes to get your shoot around or practice in, and it's all kind of crunched in. So you got to be detailed and intentional about what your time is when you're moving forward in this. And I thought my freshman year when we went into it, man, I was lucky because I was able to come off the bench at that time, and kind of follow the guys. And, we had some good leaders on our team, and Tony Harris, Vincent Yarborough, Isaiah Victor, CJ Black, Charles Hathaway, the list goes on and on. But those guys were there to kind of lead us, and we, in a sense, followed. In the year after coming into it, we kind of knew what to do, going into the NCAA tournament, and knew how to approach our opponent. And I think the biggest thing is learning that you got to go out and swing and be you. It's not necessarily about countering in that initial jump ball. Go out and be you and see what the team does, and then you start to make your pivots and how it goes. But another thing, man, the underdog, whoever the underdog is in there, man, that crowd will flip on you. As the favorite, you look up, man, and everybody be cheering against you. You be like, man, we ain't even did nothing to y'all folks. Y'all don't even know us. You know what I'm saying? But it get a little funny like that, man. But it's always a great time. It's one of the best experiences, man, that you will have as a basketball player, and that's from professional level all the way down to Pee-wee, man. You just college on this platform is nothing like it, because there's so many people that follow this game, and so many people that have followed the history of it when you get to the NCAA tournament. So it's going to be interesting to see how it played out, but some of the best times of your life right here, and you'll never forget these 3 weeks.
All right, let's take one last look at the bracket here. You mentioned the 14 teams from the SEC that are that enter the bracket or enter the tournament. Still 7 teams remaining in the Sweet 16. 43% of the bracket. No conference has ever had that many teams remaining. Ron, I know you know something about the big dance. Auburn plays Michigan. Ole Miss has Michigan State. Florida gets Maryland. Texas Tech gets Arkansas. BYU and Alabama. And then, of course, Kentucky and Tennessee. Does anybody surprise you that they're still there? And who do you see advancing to the Elite Eight in the Final Four from the SEC teams?
Nobody surprises me that they are still there. If it was a dark horse in this race, it would probably be Ole Miss. Just trying to see how their matchup will play out against a Tom Izzo-led team who is just as experienced more than experienced as far as being on this stage and knowing how to get his team to the next level. But Chris Beard, man, has his guys motivated. He got some dogs on his team. I think they've evolved into a bunch that I didn't think the camaraderie would come this quick as it did with Sean Padula leading these guys, Juju Murray at the point also, but guys like Brakefield, Malik Deal down low. You got so many weapons that you can go to, and Matthew Morrell is a guy that I think can key in on this game and be an athletic wing and be a guy to help lead this bunch. But another team would be Arkansas. I believe they would be there, especially with them getting healthy. I was able to call a couple of games leading into the end of their season, and when their 7-footers play like 7-footers, they got a problem. Every team that they run up against, Jonas Adu has stepped his game up to another level like he was last year, an all-SEC performer. Trevor Brazile is who you thought you were going to have coming into the year. Super athletic, being able to space the floor, protect the rim the way he is. And then DJ Wagner, well, I'm sure everybody in Memphis is familiar with DeJuan Wagner. Like, he is a chip off the old block, man. And he's been in the gym. These guys were going under screens earlier. He's been knocking them threes down. And now they have to defend him a different way. And my favorite, who is the X factor on this bunch, man, to me is Billy Richmond. I love Billy Richmond game, man. You talking about a lightning rod of energy. Yeah, man. His pops, y'all familiar with his pops too. So another chip off the old block, but the way he plays the game, man, a high IQ. Just got to stay out of foul trouble, but he's another guy, man, that can push this Arkansas team forward. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if they were to move on.
Yeah, Arkansas to me is maybe the biggest surprise, not because they're not a good ball club. They just started kind of so slow, and you were wondering if John Calipari was going to be able to kind of get them into a place where they would be able to really compete. And they didn't do well in the SEC or really in the SEC tournament, so you're kind of like, you're kind of ho-hum. And then they get in, and then John Calipari just starts working that magic, right? And we know why he's been so good for so long, especially when he was at his Kentucky days. Certainly everybody in Memphis knows what he brings to the table as a coach. So we'll see who pans out here and gets into the Elite Eight and potentially a Final Four. I would say a team from the SEC has a pretty good shot to make that happen. Ron Slay's Tennessee Vols will take on Kentucky tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Central. I'm sure he'll be watching with bated breath. Ron, appreciate you being on the show today, man.
Hey, man, appreciate you guys, man. M-Town, what's happening? Let's go, baby.
All right, well, we'll take a little break. Let's talk some more football here. Football back already, at least in the spring variety. Teams jumping into spring football, including the Memphis Tigers, who had their first day on Tuesday. One of 15 practices the Tigers will have before the spring game on April the 26th. Memphis coming off one of its best seasons in program history. Got 11 wins last season, including a bowl victory. But like every coach across the country these days, Ryan Silverfield's got to start over with a brand new group.
The biggest thing I wanted to see those guys out there and have an understanding of what we're doing schematically and play with great effort. And I got to see that. But it's really early. Like I told the guys, we only get 15 guaranteed opportunities, and we're down 1. So what did we do with that? Got to learn from this film, got to find ways to get better, and continue to focus on the fundamentals.
And pro football also back in the Bluff City. The Memphis Showboat season begins on Sunday when they face the Michigan Panthers in Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium. A lot of overhaul for the Showboats, including at head coach. Ken Wisenhunt was initially supposed to lead the team, but stepped away for personal reasons. Instead, it will be Jim Turner as the head man with a roster that is 72% different than a year ago. So they will take on Michigan on Sunday in Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium. That's 11 o'clock. And you can catch a lot of those games on ABC 24. Let's get into the best thing I saw this week. It's actually really the more disturbing thing I saw this week. Not really comforting, especially if you're a Grizzlies fan. Grizzlies getting into a little shoving match against the Utah Jazz. Desmond Bane goes full two-arm shove into Santi Aldama and would look like a pretty heated argument on the sideline, on the bench, and during a timeout. Grizzlies trying to hold the ship together. Just 10 games left in the regular season. They have slid from second to fifth place in the West. They did beat the Utah Jazz by almost 40 points in this game after the shove, or we're assuming it's after the shove. There's no really way to tell when this was in the game, but hopefully the big win is a sign of better things to come. Let's hope this brotherly shove is not an early sign of a flame out in the playoffs. That's going to do it for this edition of the 24th Floor. Thanks to Stephen Willis of Locked On Ole Miss. Thanks to Ron Slay of the SEC Network for their 2 cents. No shows next week while we cook up some cool stuff for ABC 24. I will see you later.